Hey, what's up everybody, this is Ostric501 and today I want to show you guys a new build I've been using on AMARA. And this build is going to be a elemental build focused on killing huge groups of enemies with a few shots or one shot. Now the first half of this video is going to be the equipment I use and the build. The second half is going to be me playing through an entire trial so you guys can see a good amount of gameplay and see how this build works and performs. So first off, we're going to go over the build, and I'm just going to do an overview of what the talents do instead of going into the exact percentiles and stuff like that, because you guys can go into and check them yourself if you want to know the exact percents and everything. So first is do harm, which increases our action skill damage off kills and off rush stacks. We actually generate rush stacks in other ways in this build, so not just off kills. Fast hands, which is reload speed mainly. 3 out of 3, this is mainly to get lower in the tree. 1 out of 5 on the tapestry, just to get it and get lower in the tree. This increases our status effect chance as more rush stacks. Then we have restless, which is 25% cooldown reduction, 5 out of 5. We have ascendant, which increases or buffs our action skill augment. We're using soul sap, which is lifesteal, so 50% lifesteal with ascendant. Then we have from rest, which gives fire rate and charge time, just some extra damage. We have laid bare, which increases the damage an enemies take when they get hit or damaged by your action skill. I did 1 out of 3 on wrath, which gives you 7.7 or 6.7% gun damage, and then another 6.7% when you activate your action skill, so just a decent chunk of gun damage. Next we have remnant, which basically sends out a homing projectile after you kill an enemy with your gun or action skill that just does your action skill elemental damage to a target, and this is affected by overkill damage, so when you overkill something, that damage gets added. This can one-shot enemies a lot of the time in this build. Then we have avatar, which lets you use your action skill basically twice in one cooldown, and if your action skill kills an enemy, it refunds half the rush stacks. And bonus rush checks are plus 10. So next we have anima, which is basically just a bunch of status effect durations, damage, stuff like that, 5 out of 5. Then we have 5 out of 5 infusion, which makes a portion of your gun damage as your action skill element, 40%. Then we have tempest, which is just increased elemental damage. We have dread, which increases your gun damage when you grasp an enemy. Then we have indiscriminate, which basically has a chance to ricochet bullets around to different enemies, and the chance and damage is affected by anything we have phase grasp, so that's just more damage. This actually does a lot of damage in this build. So then we have deep well, which is increased magazine size for elemental weapons. We have 2 out of 5 sustainment, which gives it life steal from elemental weapon damage. And that is pretty much the entire build. We're using ties that bind for our action skill, which is grasp, but the grasp target links to all the targets around it, and all the targets around it take a percentage of the damage the main target takes. And then there's kind of other ways where they take some more damage and stuff like that. And that's pretty much the entire build. Now, how does this build actually work before we get in the gear? Well, the first thing for the gear, this is the main piece of equipment you're going to need, is the Phase Zerker class mod. And the reason you need this is because on action skill used, AMARA gains her max rush stack count, but they decay over time. AMARA gains 3% weapon damage and 10% action skill cooldown rate based on the number of rush stacks, master stacks plus 5. So this is basically what you need for this build. You absolutely need this to make this build work. So before we go over the rest of the equipment, how does this build actually work? So basically, if you use phase grasp and you don't hit an enemy, basically what it does is instantly go back on cooldown or goes off cooldown so you can use it again. Now, as you'll see when I'm using this, it's giving me 25 stacks, or usually, sometimes it gives a little less for whatever reason, but it's giving me stacks of rush, and I can max out all of my rush stacks to 99. Now, what this basically does is when I phase grasp an enemy, I'm just going to do absolutely ungodly amounts of damage to them and everything around them, usually one-shotting them all. And if there's ones that weren't grasped you have that other talent that sends out a ball that just did overkill damage to like one-shot another enemy. So you're just doing ridiculous amounts of damage because of these rush stacks. And with Avatar, you're able to use your actions to go twice within one cooldown, basically. And if you don't hit anything, like I said, it goes instantly off cooldown. So you can get up your 99 stacks and then do a rush, or then phase lock something and insta kill it all. And you just weave in phase locks that don't hit enemies in between. Because with this, you will be losing stacks just over time. So you basically just keep doing a few of these in between actually hitting enemies with your phase lock, and then you absolutely destroy everything that's linked to it. And it's super good. You know, you're doing ridiculous amounts of damage. You're also healing off the damage you're dealing and off the damage you're dealing to the phase grasp enemies. So you're basically, when you phase grab an enemy and shoot them, you're instantly full HP. I'm definitely going to be looking to try to get a lot more health and a lot less shielding for this build, just because of how much healing you have. So the rest of the equipment I'm using, my artifact is completely useless right now. I don't have another good one right now. This one does absolutely nothing for this build because I don't really melee. The only artifact I've seen that I think would be good was the one when you have an element on you, you do increase damage with that element. But the only ones with those right now I have are the ones that give you 75% reduced HP with that the luck legendary effect or whatever. So I'll probably be using that when I get one. But I have a completely useless artifact right now, so you can think I'm going to have a lot more power when I get one that actually works. The grenade I'm using is a porcelain pipe bomb, which, as if you guys don't know, this thing is just from a quest and it's the most overpowered grenade in the game. It can absolutely just destroy anything. We're using the phase Zerker, as we talked about before, for our class mod. The shield I'm using is Transformer, which is a really high capacity shield for right now. And it also has phase grasp on it, or the anointed is when I phase grasp, I basically do a constant novas around me that deal a bunch of damage, which does add a bit of damage. For the weapons I'm using, the main weapon I'm using is the Crossroad, which is this SMG right here. And the reason this is so good is basically it's 3 or 4 round burst. And it's just a burst weapon, but it shoots 4 rounds each shot, so it's shooting like a dozen rounds a burst or more, and all of those rounds are shock. I don't know if you can get this weapon in non-shock, but it's all shock. And then since I mainly use fire, unless I need to switch to shock, I mainly use fire as my action skill element. It's also doing 40% as fire, so it's just doing a ridiculous amount of damage. And also with the ricochet from Indiscriminate, it'll just ricochet like the burst of like 4 rounds and stuff, or 12 rounds. It'll just ricochet tons of rounds everywhere. It's actually really cool using this weapon with this build. And that's the Crossroad. The Any Lyudas are super good. If you don't know what these are, it's a fully automatic sniper that shoots 3 rounds at a time and has 3 barrels. Does stupid amounts of damage. I have a fire one. I know you can get ones without elements. I don't know if you can get other elements, but this is super good as well. Be careful though, there's not really much ways to get ammo back with AMARA, and this runs out quick. I'm also using a Thorns pistol, and this thing's basically a pistol that shoots, this one is corrosive, so it shoots 1 corrosive and then 4 explosive shots on the outside of that. And it does a lot of damage since you can hit all 5 of these shots super easily on any phase grasped enemies. So this also does really good damage as well. And then I'm using the Shred of Fire, which is a low shred of fire, but this basically doesn't have an element on, so that's kind of why I'm using it right now, because I want a weapon without an element. Even though we do elemental damage with it, without an element it can be good for some enemies. And this thing is also super good because it shoots multiple bullets on one shot. I think it's 2. And it shoots stupidly fast. So it hits just with a lot of bullets. You can kill stuff really quickly with this as well. And that's kind of a theme with this, pumping out a lot of bullets at a time, stuff that shoots multiple bullets at once. that's what you're going to be wanting to aim for with this build. So that's pretty much the entire build. Next, we're going to go to the gameplay of the trials. But anyways, subscribe if you want to see more Borderlands 3 content. Make sure to leave a comment and tell me what you think about this build, what you think about Borderlands 3 as a whole. Leave a like if you liked the video, and thanks for watching. Also, make sure to do all that stuff because that stuff actually does help a lot, and I really appreciate it. So, thanks for watching.
Eyes up, got a target. Time out. Prove yourself. Fully energized. Nothing to it. Heads up.
Possible skills, I suppose.
Stop. Ready to unleash this power. Shoot that one and thank me later. Feel the power. Not today.
Quite the warrior.
Who wants a free kill? I'm unstoppable. Relax. Enjoy.